YouTube's. And yeah, there we go. Cool. It is up. Okay. Can't hear myself in it. Can you try talking?
I'm talking.
And yeah. Oh, there's just a lag. Okay, that's fine.
There's lag?
There's not a lag, but I think like the stream is basically just like behind us.
Yeah, one thing I usually do is that, like, if I'm not sure if it's recording, I stop the video, then I go open up the video file and see if it recorded, and then I start recording.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think we're good to go. All right, let me... I'll just drop this in media, I guess. Okay. Sweet, dude. Let's get it started. So
I like how you use the art that I used for my server.
Oh yeah, it's classic, dude. If we're gonna be talking about Spire today and everything, I figured it'd be like the most fitting. It also is like really sick art.
It was really sick. It has nothing to do with because that's like actually Bloodstone, but it's still really cool.
Yeah, the color palette they chose for it and everything was awesome. So yeah, to anyone watching this, past, present, future, welcome, I guess. This is gonna be a surprise segment, so Zerb and I are basically just going to be doing a stream where we talk about the games that we're running, how they kind of relate to CAG and everything, and yeah, answering people's questions and just having a general CAG stream. So yeah, today we're basically just going to be talking about Spire, which is Zerb's game setting that he's been working on for... How long have you been working on Spire?
Spire proper? It started with NAP 2.
Okay.
That's when I started. I put it in the world that I've been using since 91. But Spire itself, as those quadrants of the hex crawl, those were started. Those were basically born out of when I was doing my NAP 2 adventure. I kept adding things. And I eventually stopped adding things, but I kind of came up with like a nucleus to like the world. Like there's Spire, the city, there's Murfield, the town that's in Carcass of Hope, and then there's Hope, of which the Carcass is. Then I have like the Murfield dungeon, and then I had a couple of smaller adventure sites. That is not a whole lot of rooms. Spend less than a session there, where the cultist shrine was, and where the Tower of Vul was, that were all related to the Murfield Cemetery. Right. And with those 3 towns of different sizes, including a fourth view, count Wayside, I kind of had like a main artery of that hex crawl. So I decided to flesh it out in a bigger campaign. So I started writing other dungeons that would be in the area. The first one I did after Carcass was there's a dwarven complex, and I did that up and have like all these cool elevation lines and stuff like that, and nobody's been to it.
Right.
And then I did what was supposed to be originally the ziggurat that the lizardmen have in Carcass of Hope, ended up becoming the Bullywug ziggurat. So I wrote that. And then after the Bullywug ziggurat, I wrote the Tower of Exiles. And then I wrote the church. And then I wrote what was under the church. And then I wrote the Swamp Witch. And then I wrote the Melted Keep. And then I had been filling in hexes all along.
Right. And
And
this is all happening over the course of like, didn't you spend basically an entire summer getting everything ready
I
for it
spent
before you even
I
started playing?
spent after I submitted Carcass as a entry for NAP 2. I disassembled it completely because that thing was written to fit into the contest. So it had like some tables in there that I wouldn't normally use in an adventure to like what happens if you pop open this coffin. And I did that as like a space saving experiment, which I would never do again. But once I submitted it, I want to say we submitted around April,
Mm-hmm.
and I had everything as far as the core stuff. I had the first two quadrants of the hex done. I had the second two quadrants of Spire Kingdom sketched out, and I think I had something like 200 hexes and 15 dungeons done, including the top layers of the mega dungeon of Castle Harlan.
Right.
And then we started playing the online game in October. But we had started 2 months earlier in August um, with my real life group who actually played through Carcass Hope.
Right. That's right. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. And then I've got it pulled up right now for people so they can see this is basically for the online group. This is how far we've gotten with the hex map so far. So you can see there's a lot of it blacked out and everything, and that's just because we haven't haven't gotten there yet. So if we zoom in here, it's a little pixelated, but basically you can see this is kind of the starting area where we started on this east coast, and you can basically see us just traveling along roads to different locations. So yeah, I don't know. What do you want to talk about first with Spire? Do you want to go along just with the timeline of the two games? Um,
So the other group has some overlap with what the online group has done, and it's got a lot of divergences too. For example, they did Carcass of Hope. So they did the Murfield Cemetery, and they
right.
did the Tower of Vool, and um, they did the Cultist Shrine, and you guys did none of that.
Right.
You both did the Tower of Exiles. You both did the Bullywug Ziggurat.
And the
And
church stuff, right?
you both did the church, and uh, both of you haven't finished the church. You've done most of it. You've
Right.
gotten down to the bottom layer and uncovered a bunch of it. You know what? That's a lie. The real life group actually finished it,
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
so they're done with that. But they haven't found the Swamp Witch, and you've found the Swamp Witch, and that's where Stripes, Dwarven Cleric, got eaten by ghouls.
Right. Right. I remember.
And Tower of Exiles, you both did. That's where Noten's Cleric died to the giant bull wielding golem.
Right. Got smashed.
You guys have spent a good, I want to say 20 sessions, maybe 15, in the Mega Dungeon.
Yeah.
And you guys, you took the River Styx like entry with the coins into the dungeon, which entered on level 3. And then you found a stone that, when put into the throne, teleported you up to the center of level 2, where the fire dwarves were. And you guys have spent a lot of time on level 2. You came up to level 1 for a few things, but ultimately you ended up leaving. But you guys spent a lot of sessions down there. I'm going to say 15.
Yeah. So let's talk about. I feel like the stuff with Castle Harden, and I'll actually pull up the. I'm gonna switch to the VTT so we can see that. So this is the landing page for the VTT that we're playing in right now for Foundry. Let, I want to talk about like how stuff led up to us even getting to the mega dungeon, because I feel like that's
Mhm.
a really good example of like adventure game, like adventure gameplay, basically, right? Where initially, right, it all came out of my character as an assassin was doing like a training quest, basically, right? Um, but yeah, let's talk about that. Can we go to? Could you take us to? That should be on the northwest of the map, right?
Actually, do you mind if we back up even a step further and
Oh yeah,
earmark that one?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
So at towards the beginning of the online groups campaign, you had been really keen on finding more out about the Assassin's Guild.
Right.
And I remember you had spent that session going up to Salt Keep from Felnar.
Yeah, so I hitched a caravan from right here where this party token is, all the way up to Salt Keep up in the north.
Yeah, I'm unpausing it so you can. I don't know if you can see it from on that map. You should be able to. Oh,
Yeah,
this
I'm
is
over in the northwest section.
Yeah. So north from that is Salt Keep. You end up there, and you end up having a meeting with some mysterious people, and you had found out that there was a lot of merchants that were basically trying to bypass Outpost there to the east.
Right.
And you found out that a bunch of them were being like a bunch of the actual caravans of the wagons and everything were going missing, and the people were too. So you guys basically, in short, had been investigating around and going to the hex map that's east of what this quadrant is. I can actually change it east.
Yeah, because I remember we went, and I think we actually did some information gathering at Outpost, and then that's when we got information about. I think where you're going with that with the shark, right?
The grassland bandits.
Yeah.
Yep, the shark who leads the grassland bandits, which I don't see.
Grassland bandits look like they're right here. I've got them in the hex. So we ended up going to Outpost, getting that information, traveling all the way across through Outposts to Cloverward and then Murfield, I think, or just straight to Murfield.
Well, the thing that I didn't actually count on, so the Grassland Bandits were originally written as part of Carcass. They were there as an entity that might have been useful against the Lizardmen if they got pissed off.
Right.
So they were there. They have their own goals, but the main role that they fill on that road to the north of them is that they charge tolls, but everybody gladly pays it because they're also protecting those roads, because those are not a kingdom patrolled road. So people are like, oh, this is a small price to pay because we pay X gold a head, and they've actually kept the road pretty clear. And you guys ended up having a meeting with them, and this wasn't planned at all. You guys had convinced them that, hey, we're going to hire you to assault the bandits that are doing all these disappearances. I'm going to change back.
Right.
And we actually did our first mass combat that way.
Yeah, so that was basically like a whole session almost of us going around, doing information gathering, going to Outposts, figuring out about the bandits at the church. They were kidnapping and killing merchants. Going then, finding out about the other bandits, going there, hiring them, and then, doing our first mass combat at the church.
And then, of course, once the church was pretty much cleared out, you killed the named NPCs. That's where you got your short sword of quickness, by the way.
Yeah, which is I literally have still used up from what that had to be like second or third level all the way up to I think I'm at 8th now with the assassin.
I mean, even with the cool darkness sword, you're like, yeah, but I'm using the short sword of quickness.
Hitting first is so crazy. Like it's so many situations where it's just better to hit first than getting like the 2d4 damage from the broadsword. Whatever.
Yeah. So of course, then you found the basements under the church, and you found that they were basically, getting fed these moss drugs that were not only functioning as, basically fantasy meth would, but it was doing too much of it, turned them into zombies. And you saw there was like a bunch of the dudes in the cages and stuff that had already been turned. But you also found a hidden door that went down into the crypts that the church once served. And you spent quite a few sessions. You spent, I think, at least 2 sessions on the floor below that. And then you've spent at least 2 sessions on the floor below that as well. And for a while, you guys kind of like held the church. You guys basically kind of like stocked it up with henchmen. So that was kind of like I didn't anticipate that's how that situation would play out, allying the Grassland Bandits against the the bandits at the church and everything. So then fast forwarding to, if you want to go to the map that shows everything that you've revealed from the campaign.
Yeah, let me pull that up really quick.
That kind of has like another thing. So, in between that, you've cleared out the Tower of Exiles, right? So Gus, I remember, was really keen on getting in good with the kobolds that occupied the caves on the east side of the Tower of Exiles. And he basically led a charge with like 25 kobolds running through the dungeon, like just wiping out cultists and stuff. And then like the north middle part was basically all the interred undead. There was the big round room that had a mausoleum in the middle, and it had the mummies that were dressed up like popes, and they were coming after you. And I remember them getting hit with a fireball. So then they were pope mummies on fire coming after you, which is one of the coolest things that you can imagine.
Right.
And then you guys had done some other exploratory things, kind of dipped your toes into other dungeons. You had even gone down the coast on the west coast, and you had gone down towards the Blymouth Hex. And the Blymouth Hex is where you found the beginning of the tide, right? You found the seaside place. There was a couple of sessions trying to get in there. Both entrances ended up in near disaster, so you guys decided to pull out for now. But going back to that big map, that big line that kind of cuts through the middle, south of Cloverwort,
Mm-hmm.
you guys had discovered the dome that had the guy that would basically just traveled around by like a bunch of like coconut crabs, like think of the Amelia Earhart coconut crabs, carrying him around. And he basically hired you to get something out of King Gonto's tomb, which was that water elemental controlled tomb. And you had traveled south, and the important bit here, because we're kind of getting to the mega dungeon portion, is that you found the dwarven coppersmiths.
Right.
And you latched right onto that.
Yeah, and those are in this hex right here, you're saying below Gonto.
Yeah.
So we run into these smiths, and then they give us something. We have to exchange something for those coins, right?
Yes, they will. They export coins, two different types of coins that provide two different types of passage, one to the afterlife and one to the mega dungeon, basically. And they trade them for secrets. So you guys had to think of the things that you found out and tell the dwarves, because they trade primarily in secrets.
Right. And so during all like of what you described of us going around and adventuring at all these different locations, in between this time, I was basically, to level up, right, doing these assassination missions to get my training costs paid for. So during this time, I was racking up information about stuff that was going on all over the place. So when we ran into coppersmiths, then we were able to easily trade them information. And at that point, we had known about an entrance to the mega dungeon, or at least a lead on how to get there. And that kind of leads to the city, or the ruined city. Can't remember the name right now off the top of my head. I think it was it Wayside? It's another place.
No.
It would be...
It's Briar Glen.
Briar Glen, right? That's it.
Right. So there was we've done quite a bit of sessions of it. Jeff, who's in chat, was part of this leg of it. Especially was down at the south part, right, near Castona.
Mm-hmm.
You guys had spent a good 3 sessions in the Tower of Necromancy,
right?
And you kind of got familiar with the Castona area. Now, Castona every month basically got attacked from the hobgoblins to the south,
right,
who are in league with the forces of Castle Harlan.
Right. Can we go to there on the VTT map? Is that cool?
Maybe.
No worries.
Yeah. Yes. I'm going to activate.
Cool. So yeah, people can see here. This is Castona. So we got the Tower of Necromancy, Cave of the Frog, Brianna's.
The Cave of the Frog is just like a small adventure site. It's basically, I don't know, like a 6-room cave.
Mm-hmm.
That's what your friends did for that one session. And then, so Briannis is a walled city that nobody can get into unless you're super rich. They don't just let anybody in. So, eventually, traveling from Castona to the Tower of Necromancy and then later to Briar Glen, you basically have to go around. But Briar Glen's like a ruined town.
Right.
It's on that outer area where the forces of Castle Harlan, because there's a war going on, pushing north-south between the forces of Spire and Castle Harlan. And I don't have great symbols set up on this map. That's why there's an O there, and then there's why a C over at Castle Harlan, because
right.
I hadn't made the symbols for it yet.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you found out that there's an entrance underneath the town of Briar Glen that stretches across miles that goes underneath Castle Harlan, and you kind of latched onto that. And through the accumulation of coins, this is a heavily occupied town, right? So you guys basically had to stealth in. I remember there was the one house that you had to basically clear out, and you found a way down into the sewers, and then you had to fight through a bunch of were-rats that were basically holding that territory. And that was one more kind of like loose sewer, and then it dropped down into like a more proper like dungeon sewer, and then that dropped down into an actual cavern that connected to some ancient crypts, which you kind of like went around the side to. And once you got towards the certain spot, you kind of stumbled into it. And then there was like this skeletal boat, and it had like this like ghoul-like head, and its like arms like formed like the sides of the boat, and you basically paid it in coins, and it basically like tunneled you straight into basically the middle of level 3. And I remember when you guys got there, he's like, we don't have our bearings. We don't know where we are. We don't know which way is up. We don't know which way is down. You didn't know it was level 3 at the time.
Yeah, and to like put this into perspective for people, you can see how far away like Castona and Briannis are from Briar Glen. So this is us as, adventurers basically getting to this place, super touch and go in the middle of like an enemy army, getting into like the small small house with the were-rats, going under and just kind of like fumbling through this dungeon, trying to find something that we vaguely know about, right? We know we have these coins, we know there's some kind of stick situation going on, and then we manage to find that, and we just basically hard commit. We just say fuck it, and then we go into the mega dungeon, and we're totally lose all bearings, yeah, with no easy way to get back, because we have a limited amount of coins. We can only go back. I don't even know if we had enough to get back at that point, but
so
yeah.
I dropped the party token onto the map. I don't know if you can see it. Somebody was asking if it was made to scale with Foundry's native grid system for the Fog of War. I made it fit. So, Josh, you can go ahead and move that to the northeast, and you can see how it reveals it, and then move it back.
Oh, right. If we go like up here and back.
Yeah. See how it reveals it? And then I can just very easily, I can basically rehide it if I want. World Explorer. See, hidden again. Revealed.
Yeah, so that's using the World Explorer module, right?
That's World Explorer.
Gotcha.
So I made it fit. So this is like a Judge's Grilled default size, and that's what I'm using for the 4 major quadrants, and as also Lich Valley. So you guys did spend a lot of time down in the mega dungeon, and then you guys
we managed
decided
to find like a, what was it? It was basically a gnome. We found like a gnome village underneath inside of the mega dungeon, right?
Yeah, there's a deep gnome village under there that you ended up kind of using as a springboard to go deeper into the west part of level 2, and you even found a hidden sub level down there.
Right. And so with all this happening too, maybe it'd be good to talk about the time system you used for running or you are using for running the campaign, and how that kind of changes depending on where you're at.
You mean like every day that passes in between session time is 1-to-1?
Yeah, because you basically use 1-to-1 time most of the time, right? And then in certain places, like in Castle Harlan, the clock basically gets stopped, right?
Yeah, and I do that as like a logistics thing, right?
Right.
For Castle Harlan, it is not easy to get to it to begin with, and it's certainly not easy to delve and then come out of it very easily. So basically, when we only have 3 hours to play,
Right.
and we want to get the most out of it, like in certain in certain places, I'll just pause the game. It just makes much more sense than having to okay, well, we got 45 minutes left. We should start our trek back because we have to walk our way out of the dungeon. Then we have to walk our way across, 13 hexes to get to someplace that's civil. And you just get more game time out of it. So that I'll pause it in those instances. And I do the same thing for Syphlor too. Like, so, I mean, that place is a very weird place anyway. You're kind of crossing the veil, and time works differently there anyway. And that's where you guys are now.
Mm-hmm.
So that also can be set up that way. But for as a general rule, everything else is all right. Well, we have a half an hour left, and our session's ending at 10 or 11 or whatever the time is. It's time to think about resolving things as you go back to town.
Right. And so, why did you? What made you want to use 1-to-1 time?
The passage of time happening allows players to take advantage of like downtime for training, right?
Right.
Downtime for campaign passage, because I have a timeline of how things are going to go if they aren't interacted with or if they are interacted with, right? So like with
Right.
the war is actually a thing. I talked about 10 minutes ago about Castona's once a month. It's being attacked by hobgoblins, and I make a roll every month to see if they are successfully defending it. Because they have this trench dug around the whole town, and they're basically all set up with a militia to defend it, and they've been able to defend it up to a certain point. But sometime after you guys leaving the mega dungeon and going on a different path, they ended up losing that role, and so now the hobgoblins are occupying it, which is a distraction for the war, because the forces of Spire that are pushing down against Castle Harlan, they have to use some of their forces to try to go get Castona back, because that's just allowing unfettered reinforcements from the mountain range to the south to bolster Castle Harlan's forces. So
Right. And then you
that's what's
also
going.
have this stuff happening with the moon, right? And the meteors. I completely forgot about that until just now.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, there was meteors that fell on a certain day. I have the timeline written somewhere, and those meteors they just enter the rumor pool, and you guys had discovered two of them. You interacted with one of them, but you were very careful not to touch it. When you went after the second one, you just kind of like saw like this big trail of like uh, folded over trees as it like led, and there was entity that was inside that one with the sword. That
Mm-hmm.
that whole thing. So that was one of the things you did after Castle Harlan. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's things that stick out in my mind is like, a lot of times in the Discord we'll talk about like, oh, having like the world move on outside of the players or stuff that makes it feel like a living, breathing world. And like when you're a player and you're seeing that kind of stuff happening or you're picking up rumors and hearing about that stuff, that's definitely makes it feel like holy shit, there's so much stuff going on. Um, it was just really cool, and that's something I really enjoyed about the campaign. So I figured that'd be worth bringing up. But yeah,
And then
so
after the mega dungeon, you guys, decided you wanted a bit of a change of scenery. There's only so much delving that you wanted to do in the same place. So you guys, that trail that's kind of going north from Briar Glen up through the forest, that leads up to the north. northeast hex again. Change hexes again. And you were basically kind of circumventing this forest area, and you found out about a dragon. And then everybody in the group really, well, not everybody, but most people in the group got really keen on seeing what they could encounter with the dragon. And so they started trying to find more information about dragons. And the table turned up Saldrith, who's up on the northeast coast in the disguise of an old woman. And you went to talk to her. And she won't give you help until you basically get the urn of Caesar birth, because the dragon that you're hoping to fight has her eggs. And that's just the situation that's just been it's been sitting there for I want to say like a year and a half before you guys even encountered any of that area. And you guys interacted with it. You guys decided that you wanted to go deal with the dragon, and you guys decided it would be a good idea to have a bronze on your side.
Right.
So she can't enter Syphlor because of the barrier because the Syphlor is basically this big sprawling forest that was an elven kingdom. In the Elven Kingdom, they got a little too advanced with their practices, and basically devils and demons had come through. And the barrier is meant to keep out powerful beings such as devils, demons, and dragons from going in or coming out of that barrier. So you guys can cross through the barrier, and she needs you to do that to go find this urn of Caesar birth. And you found your way to Denitra's tomb, where she said it should be, and you found your way inside of the twisting obelisk.
And this is all inside of, so Syphlor blows up then into like a hex flower map, right? Because each of these hexes on the map are 6 miles, and then getting to that one, it's like all within the 6 miles.
That section of Syphlor.
Can we see that map?
Syphlor blows up in section, blows up to more than that. So let me, where's the, so this is just a portion. This is like one hex that's blown up out of about 45 hexes.
Oh, okay. Sweet.
So this is like just the edge of Syphlor. So, yeah, so you got your way to Queen Denitra's crypts. And you went down below, and you've been delving in that dungeon. We took a hiatus after, I would say 2/3 of floor 1 was complete. And then you guys have gone down to the second floor, and you've made some other discoveries, and we've had a couple of sessions there since we've returned back. But there's like this whole laundry list of things that you want to do. You want to finish this. You want to try to find the Urn of Caesar birth. You just discovered that below the second level, there's this vast underground city where you heard screeching and wing flapping. And you want to go down there. You want to go do the seaside stuff of part of the tide. There's still the mega dungeon to go back to. You still have that dragon that you've decided that you want to take care of. There's like this whole list of things that you wanted to really get into.
We still gotta go kill the swamp witch, finish stuff at the church, check out the
Smiling
dwarves.
Jack.
Yeah, there's still just tons of stuff, because it's, as we've been going through all this all the time, there's little earmarks that gets picked up. We deal with them like a little bit, but then there's still like loose ends, and it's just like this continuing thing of building up more and more stuff to do, which is absolutely part of the fun of like a huge sandbox like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can we see the Queen's Crypts like dungeon map?
So this would be the first level.
Right. And this isn't all that we've explored, but since we're using like the dynamic fog stuff with Foundry, the last session that we came, it just illuminated this stuff. So you can see this is where we've pretty much been beelining up to this well that leads to the second level.
Yes, that for instance, if you go down to the very bottom there, you know that West Passage goes to that cavern that has the waterfall where that giant crayfish was.
Right, and I think we actually
And
have.
then and then up the waterfall there was that other cavern where there was like a little island that had the elven chainmail.
Right, and we can see it here in the
There was
Spire
whirlpools
journal.
up there. Yeah.
So people can kind of see all the different maps and everything of different places that we've been going.
I'll
Mega
switch to
Dungeon.
the second one since that's a little bit more freshly explored. Yeah, so that's the first layer. That was everything that was explored. That was screenshotted from the old VTT.
Right. So yeah, this is as far as we've gotten in here.
Yeah, Mega 2 is I had to piece that together and make it fit into one picture, so it's not accurate. But that yeah, so there's some stuff missing even on that because you guys went through that east wall
Right.
and you guys went all the way up that. But I had to reset the fog of war because there's like this weird thing that sometimes when you reveal the fog of war, sometimes it you know it doesn't unhide, it doesn't
Right.
rehide itself.
So yeah, and then on this picture, y'all can see kind of like up in the top right there is the gnome village, and then we've just basically explored through that. And then yeah, there's some stuff that is not here that has also been explored. And then it looks like we're running into a similar situation here where there's that giant underground city. So it's like all these things of finding something and then it kind of just explodes open into a bunch of stuff to explore, which has always been really really exciting to never know, especially like the breadth and everything of the game where we've been running into like smaller adventure sites where you go in, clear out like a little 6-room deal, get something cool, go to another place, do like a proper, 30-room dungeon like with Tower of Exiles.
I've just pulled up Tower of Exile, so you can actually just walk through that because that's done. Like,
Oh yeah,
you,
so looks like the door's locked.
and yeah, incidentally, that's one of the only older maps that I've transferred onto Foundry. Of the
Right.
rest of them, like for the church and stuff, I still have to like go in there. You have to size it, and you got to build the walls and stuff like that. In person, like I have, like the hex map is quite different there, right? So like I basically printed out a blank hex map, and we use stamps. I know you use stamps too, and we just shade them in with colored pencils. So the hex map is like this big poster that's colored pencils and stamps, and
Right.
then there's basically like reams of graph paper for all the different adventures that they've done. Um, I think Carcass of Hope is basically like 3 pieces of graph paper taped together.
Right. Yeah. So it's always cool being able to go to like a place and then not know whether it's just going to be like a small thing that you're in or if it's going to blow up into like a gigantic underground city. It's always something that keeps the game super exciting. Awesome. Sweet. And I think that covers a lot of what we've. I mean, there's there's so much and so many like smaller things that we've done through it because it's been basically like a 2-year game, right, for the online group.
Yeah, and it's been just a little bit longer for the real life group, but they didn't have like an 8 month hiatus like the online group did. So
Right.
they've ultimately done a lot more. And then of course there's the third group, right, where they've so Lich Valley is to the north of all 4 quadrants. It's directly above the
Right. And I've got that map pulled up here on the VTT or on
and
the
yeah, so
Discord.
that one was a continuation of a campaign that lasted years as well. So those characters are a more higher level. And when I we were talking because they wanted to start up the game again, and when I was thinking about doing was I was like, you know what? I don't think any of these guys know the G series. I should run them through the G series. I think that would be fun. And that was my plan for a while. I did the maps for it, like I got them all VTT'd and everything. And then I started writing this area right here on the northeast map of Spire was basically like 4 hex entries, and they were very vague. And I decided to flesh them out, and then it blew up. It got huge. So they've started on this, and they've come through. and entered the valley. There's the Glenhaven, which is this giant tortoise that basically stays still for an entire year, except for there's like a week during the year where it basically grazes across the plains in like a big figure 8 and then returns. And there's like all these druids that are on top of the back of the shell where like the upper town is, and they basically, keep it placated and make sure that it's cared for. And so that's like the main city of that region. And then there's Kermada, which is like the superstitious evil lurking underneath swamp village. And when they got here, they've done some of the hex stuff. They went to the gremlins, which is basically like there's like these little like cornfield gremlins, right?
Right.
And there's this giant grass spirit, and they basically kidnap people and sacrifice it to this grass spirit. And so this grass spirit has been terrorizing the farmlands up there. And so that was one of the first things they took care of. They went to the Woonhart farmstead, which is where there's this living wall in the basement that's consisting of all the people that lived at the farmstead that's just been absorbed into this wall. And there's Kermada, which has basically this ruined church, this whole abbey that's kind of like above the town. And everything is connected there, where you can go underneath through the graveyard, through the mausoleums, or underneath the church. There's a bunch of different entrances into this complex. And then it kind of runs south until it gets to through all these cavern systems. It'll eventually connect to like the basement system of Kermada. So all these cultists in Kermada, they're kidnapping strangers and they're making sacrifices to Bahamut underneath there. So underneath the dungeon kind of has like all these different regions where like the more like basement connected system is set up for like the cultist. They get rid of the bodies once they're done sacrificing them to there's a giant Otyug that's just chilling out in one of the caverns there. There is the Pumasi, which are these cat people that live in the caves that worship like this big repurposed cat head shrine that are they can be dealt with. The party that play through it, they ended up allying themselves with them. And then of course the whole north part that's kind of underneath the abbey and everything like that, that's where a lot of the clergy from this church and stuff were interred. And they spent quite a bit of time in that section. They've done some wandering in the swamp. They found some effigies out in the swamp. They've met the Hairbeard barbarian tribe to the north. And they've just kind of scratched the surface on dealing with the troglodytes that took over a dwarven city that was set into the mountains. These worshippers of the snake god that had a bunch of troglodytes under their service basically had these massive snakes tunnel their way through the dwarven city, kind of eradicating them. So all the dwarves had to leave that city long ago, and they had to flee to Glenhaven. But it's crawling with snake men. Think like Conan the Barbarian, when the guy turns into a snake man, except for, he's not human. He's just a snake man.
Right.
And there's a giant snake there, and there's a lower level that they quite haven't discovered yet. They're kind of like still branching out in that first level. But we had to kind of take a hiatus there because two of the players basically just had a kid, so they're going to be out of commission for a few months.
Right, for sure.
But within this whole area, Gortha Mithrix, the red dragon, that's like a whole like fire giant red dragon and cultists to the red dragon lair area. So that's like a whole adventure site of its own. In the Aberrant Wilds, there is the Star Crypts, where these basically astrology-driven priestesses and priests ran this clergy until basically bad things happened and it's no longer friendly there. So there's quite a big structure under there. And then, of course, there's Tzak Joko above the stone Bone Mountains, which is basically like this floating island with this Lich's Tower. It's basically been putting a lot of this stuff in the valley into play. So that's this in itself is, I'm probably estimating that with this high level group, that, I mean, this is probably going to last for good 6 months once we start reconvening.
Right, just because there's so much. Like that's a lot of stuff for sure. And this is all just stuff you've put together too, and you're kind of compiling it, right?
Yeah, I have. Out of all the stuff that I try to keep everything. I say everything. I try to keep most things written so that somebody else can run it.
Mm-hmm.
The Mega Dungeon is an exception. The Mega Dungeon is so big that it can't help but be in some places very shorthand. So it's not like if I handed it to somebody, somebody might be like, I don't really know what's going on here. But like Tower of the Exiles is written pretty cleanly. A lot of that stuff that kind of goes into the central Spire hexes, that stuff is nice and compiled and formatted and ready so that once I, clean it up and it's where I want it to be, somebody else can run it. Lich Valley in itself. So what's going on this map? This one's probably the most complete. So this one's going to be like 120 page hardback, and the PDF is going to be free, and it's basically just going to be at cost, through Lulu once I'm happy with it. But in order for me to be happy with it, they need to finish playing through it, because every time you write something and you bring a party through it, there's always something you come up with. It's like, this could be better.
Right.
And then, I have some other stuff like the seaside dungeon stuff that is almost done because my real life group it's got like maybe one more session before that's complete. And then I'll have a pretty good idea. And that one's very ambitious as well because, it's 3 dungeons that are connected. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then, everything else is being tracked kind of separately, but this one right here is probably the most complete. Like this one would probably be the one that like I could probably upload right now and it would be pretty good. And it's got I'm pretty happy with the artwork that's in it too.
Nice, hell yeah. Oh yeah, we should put some of that up. Well, you've got all that then. You've got a lot of the art too in the Spire project thing on the Discord server, right?
Yeah.
So people are curious and haven't gotten a chance to see it yet. They can check that out.
Yeah, I think I should double check, but I'm pretty sure that the new cover, which is better than the old, because it's. So I got like I got the picture of the Hairbeard tribe, the barbarians.
Mm-hmm.
I got a picture of Goramithrix, which is in that thread. Got a picture of. I don't know if I. Actually might not have the new. Yeah, I don't think I do actually. So like the see if I can find a new cover and give you a picture.
Okay, yeah, I'll get it uploaded to here.
And I do all this stuff, all the mapping and stuff. I basically just do in GIMP. But like the dungeons and stuff now, I've already talked to you about it, but I basically did a grid. And then I use that grid as like a base layer, and then I just kind of draw on top of it and fill it in.
Alrighty. So cool. And then I might pull up so we've been doing yours. We went on a little hiatus for a little bit and then started back up, and then I also started my game up. So I think I might go ahead and launch that, and I can kind of show people that. We've only been playing kind of a few sessions, but I figure I can kind of show people the landing page and give some people some background while we're doing the overviews of our 2 different sessions. because we're basically
Yeah, let's just
alternating
talk
weeks
about.
right now and when we're running. So my server's got to start up and everything. But yeah, that's another thing we can do too if people are interested. I bet we could just do streams showing off like how we do stuff in GIMP and Photoshop for map making, because I think that's a huge thing for a lot of people is kind of a roadblock for getting like dungeons and that kind of stuff made, to just having the right tools to do it. But you really can do a lot with pretty simple software, I think. Especially something like GIMP, I think honestly, GIMP and Photoshop can be like a lot more intuitive at a certain point than having to get even some of the software that's just made specifically for making dungeons.
I gave you the art for Lich Valley, although I don't have the cover. I know I have the cover somewhere, but I'm not gonna spend the time looking around for it. I'm a little unorganized for that. But that's the art that would be part of the cover. It'll be framed up and everything. But do you want me to log into your game?
Yeah, sure. Well, here, I've got it logged in. The server's still starting up. It basically fell asleep while we were doing the thing, so I've just got to wake it up. But let me add... So yeah, let me pull this stuff up. Should make it. Yeah, so it's just got to wake up, but yeah, so we're hoping to do these pretty frequently, and then we're also gonna have like Gus, E, and people on. If anyone does end up having like any questions on CAG stuff in general, or like stuff that they've seen talked about in the server that they want us to like discuss in a voice format, we're probably going to be doing that here in the stream, just because obviously the editing has been kind of like a roadblock for us, and we want to get stuff out there for people. So yeah.
Probably close mine because I got. I think we're done with mine, right?
I think so, yeah. Mine's still just booting up. I was just going to kind of show this is all the different stuff that we have for like the landing page, which is, so how's it been switching from Roll20 to Foundry?
I mean, you gotta give yourself a couple weeks to kind of familiarize yourself with it because a lot's different. But like you could do a lot of cool things. Like if you click on that moon, that brings you to like the test map where people, can go to the Tower of Exiles and start beating up monsters that I just dropped in there. Because,
right.
One of the things you want to be able to do is have people be familiar in how to do the most common things with their characters. So I put that hidden link under the moon that glows in the background, and then I put links right on the front page so they can access the journal, they can access their characters, they can access the 4 quadrants of the hex map.
Right. Yeah, and then you got journals, henchmen, just everything easily accessed. So this is my game that I've started running. So it's like a science fantasy game, Blasted Lands. So I've got kind of this landing page for it where you can go to character sheets. There's like different intel and everything that I've put up for it with kind of just like setting information, pretty basic stuff. And then this is the hex map that I have. So all this stuff is made just using like bit mapping, icons, and Photoshop. But I kind of wanted to have it be like a retro game. So they've started in this subterranean city of Gideon 5 in this mountain range. And we basically we were just wanting to test out Foundry and kind of get the combat down. So I put this little Chrome Gargoyle dungeon right here. And so the last few sessions have basically just been them going back and forth from Gideon 5 to this dungeon, doing some different stuff. So it's been pretty cool. They got pretty far in it. It's kind of like basically a laboratory, right? With a bunch of undead plant monsters, as well as these Chrome Gargoyle automatons that shoot lasers out of their eyes that they ended up not wanting to to fight. But
yeah, those things like ruined walls, and I like if they can blast down walls, what are they going to do to a level 2 character?
Oh yeah, for sure. And so yeah, I started everyone at 5,000 XP, so a lot of people are multi-class, level 2, right? But yeah, that was something though that I thought was important. I think I like putting stuff like that in the game. I don't level lock a lot of stuff in terms of trying to have it be just stuff that they can defeat, but that was definitely something that was telegraphed very early on. In fact, as soon as they got outside of the dungeon, there was like some, rubble had collapsed on top of one, and they were able to see its eye attack go off, right, in a way that didn't kill them. So it's kind of foreshadowing for the rest of the dungeon. So they knew if they ran into them, it'd be serious business. So I like stuff like that a lot. I feel like it's good to telegraph stuff. I think it kind of makes it more interesting when the players kind of know what they're going to be up against and then can kind of formulate plans against it, rather than just,
Yeah, that was the
the
first thing we saw, was that we saw one of those broken gargoyles in the front, and we saw like how much destruction was going on. We're like, oh, okay. And so I think the second time that we encountered what might be a gargoyle is when we kind of peeked around that hallway, and we saw that there was a couple of them flanking the hallway. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure we don't want to go that way.
Right.
And then I think the third time was when we went to that big room to the north, and we were messing around, and then like the rubble started moving, and one of those crawled out, and we're like, no, let's go. No.
Right.
We're out of here.
So yeah. So it's been cool. It's been cool getting to kind of try and blend fantasy and science fiction tropes and stuff into the game. This whole dungeon, I think you mentioned, had kind of like a Resident Evil feel to it, which I really liked. It gets a lot of like interactive stuff where you're doing something in one part of the dungeon, pulling a lever, opening a valve or whatever, and it affects something somewhere else. And that's kind of more of like a science fiction thing that you don't see as much in fantasy sometimes, or at least in the way it's executed. I have like generators and stuff like that can get turned on with fuel cells that they can find like throughout the dungeon, right? So I like having stuff like that where you're kind of exploring, getting to interact in different ways than just, going in and punching something in the face, even though there is a lot of that in this dungeon too. But
and it still feels like D&D. So that's kind of like another topic that can really be a deep dive, is like when you start to like push the boundaries of genre, right? Mm-hmm. Then it's very easy for things to not feel like D&D. And I think that as long as like the main focus is that it still feels like D&D, and then you basically kind of fill it in with the flavor, then it still feels like D&D, but it's different. And I try to do that myself. Like, as you know, I'm into some of the darker stuff, but I also like, I gotta stop myself. I gotta pull myself back, because what works in fiction doesn't translate necessarily into D&D. So at the end of the day, it still needs to be in D&D. And playing through like the Chrome Gargoyle dungeon, it was very D&D.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and for me, throughout designing that, I mean, a lot of it was, so a big difference too between this campaign and Zerb's is he had like a lot of work done beforehand. For me, I very much was like, all right, I just need to start up a game and get it running. So I was just getting stuff ready basically as I needed to, right? Which over time you try to prep up more and more stuff so you don't have to do that as much, and you can kind of just be ready to go. But yeah, this dungeon was prepped built basically a week before the game even started. I just slammed it out, I think, in like 2 nights. But a big consideration whenever I was putting in something that was more science fiction-y is that I thought in my brain of different analogous things that could happen in fantasy, right? Or could happen in a typical D&D game. So there was nothing that was super outside of the box in terms of being way different from what people would normally expect to engage with, or what kind of the normal gameplay loops are like. So I think that kind of stuff is always really important.
Yeah, and you have a very stylized, 8-bit pixel style going on, with like all the icons. It's kind of like a uniform thing. Mine's kind of like a 15-year-old with a marker.
No, I think it's still good. We'll have to see how it goes with this one. I was hoping that the icons would make stuff very apparently different. As I start to expand the hex map and it gets pretty big, I noticed just having one color for everything is kind of a little bit harder to follow visually. But at least where we're at right now, it seems to work. So,
I mean, that red really contrasts with things. So like my eyes, like instantly when I look at it, like I'm drawn to everything that's red.
Right.
So it's like I keep looking at the precipice. I'm like, what's the precipice? I look at Jane Mare. I'm like, okay, There's Gideon 5. There's Janemere. There's the dungeon. There's some things down there that look like runes, I think, at the very south.
Yeah, so that's when you start getting to the canyons. So a lot of the Blasted Lands is just like literally just.
Did you log in as EOTB?
I did log in as EOTB.
That's super confusing. I was like, oh, is E watching?
Yeah, no, I just didn't want to have it all be exposed and just spoiler everything. So I just did it there. So we still have the file.
Oh, yeah, very smart.
But yeah, so basically this is all like just blackened wasteland, right? Toxic pits everywhere for the wasteland. The Skyscar mountain range is similar to that. But then once you start getting to the canyons, it's like a hyper verdant thing with a bunch of rivers and everything in it. So I like contrasts like that too. I think a lot of people when they're building stuff make it kind of monotone sometimes, especially when you're going for like a post-apocalyptic thing. But I wanted a super stark contrast. So that's like, next session y'all are heading to the jungle plateaus, which is going to be another thing with a crazy amount of wildlife and different stuff going on. And the canyons are like that as well, with huge rivers that just, it's like a huge, you can see there's a treasure map that is pointing towards a lake, but this whole area is basically just covered in giant canyons with huge rivers and vegetation and stuff. So that should be super exciting once you get there. And then, the precipice is literally a gigantic hole in the ground that also has some, mysterious stuff going on. So.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that covers basically a lot of the background for our games. And then basically as we're playing them each 2 weeks, we'll be doing this. And then I think we're also going to be going over kind of stuff that's happened in the Discord and questions people have had and talking about them and kind of expanding upon CAG related topics. So yeah, I mean, is there anything else in terms of that kind of stuff that you want to talk about for this Zerb, or do you feel like we're kind of good to go on just getting the background down today?
I think we're pretty good to go. I think it'll be good to every once in a while kind of touch base though. Where's the campaigns gone since we last talked about it? Because we kind of did like a huge kind of, at least on my side, it was very info dumpy, right?
Right. Well, that's also trying to consolidate 2 years of gameplay, into like
2 years.
Or...
Yeah, it was 2 years of gameplay for the online group, 2 years of gameplay for the IRL group, and then a continuation of another campaign for another group. And it's like I am trying to give like a brief overview, but I'm basically like giving the history of the world in like 100 words or less.
Right. Sweet. Okay, well, awesome. Well, I think that'll conclude our first stream and everything. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you do have any questions or there's anything you want us to talk about, definitely just ping us in the Discord, write it in the comments. We will look at it and we'll talk about it. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up. You have a good one. I'll see you later.
You too.